Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 23rd SIG Release weekly meeting. My name is Jeremy, and I'll be the host today. I have placed the notes into the chat. I'll do it one more time just in case anybody joined after we started. If you could go ahead and add yourself as an attendee, that would be super awesome. So we have an idea about who attended. And if we have anybody that wants to volunteer to be a note taker, that would also be really great. All right, with that, go ahead and open it up. If there's anybody that's new, has never attended a SIG release meeting or hasn't attended in a long time and would like to say hello again, feel free to come off mute and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're interested in.
Hello, Patrick's here. So yeah, I'm mainly involved in the K8s infra-SIG, but I'm today to hear about the OBS stuff that Marco is working on.
Awesome.
Yeah, my name is Michael Levan. I do pretty much everything and anything in the Kubernetes space as an independent consultant. And this is my first time on the release team. So I'm on the docs release team. So this is my official first meeting.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else before we get going?
And Jeremy, I can take some notes to help you out there, so you don't got to do double duty.
Right. Perfect. Thanks, Jim. Always helpful. All right. With that, we'll jump into our sub-project updates. And first up, we'll have release engineering. Marco, do you want to kick us off there?
I added some notes. So the first one is that patch releases went out last week. Thanks to Veronica, Jim, and Jeremy for taking care of those releases. The only minor hiccup that we had while cutting those releases is that sending announcement failed because for some reason SendGrid, the provider that we use for emails, blocked Jim. And because we are using the free tier, we didn't have any support. We handled that. Actually, Jeremy handled that by taking care of announcements the next day and also sending a letter to apologize to the community for not providing the update on time. But so far, everything went very well. The releases are pretty stable, no problems with promotion process, which is very nice. And once again, thanks to everyone who worked on improvements to actually make the process more stable. Do you have anything maybe to add regarding patch releases, Jeremy and Jim?
I think they went pretty well. Thanks to Grant for jumping in to help us out with the publishing of the packages. That was helpful too. I've updated the calendars, so we should have captured all of the relevant information about those patch releases and the tentative next ones, and the calendar has been updated for July and August as tentative dates as well. So if anybody's interested in when those might be, we have tentative dates posted.
Thank you for taking care of that. And yeah, if there's no any question, I will go to the next topic. And this is the OBS implementation. It is going very well so far. I am planning to do a presentation later today, so I think we can do it. I don't see a lot of faults here, but it is recorded and I have pretty detailed slides, so I think it is going to be useful. And also something that I don't have a lot of details about, but I have seen Carlos working on migrating to CoSci v2. I think there is some changes merged to krel earlier today and also to release libraries that we have. So this is in progress. Let's hope that we will have CoSci v2 support soon. And if there are no questions, handing over to release team.
Oh, I don't know if we have anybody representing the release team in an authoritative capacity, but Grace left a couple of notes in the meeting agenda, so we can just read those off for the record too. Start at the bottom. All the shadows are confirmed and onboarded. So welcome to everybody that is joining the release team this cycle. It's exciting to have everybody join us. And then last meeting, Grace proposed potential release timeline changes, but those aren't going to happen because enhancements and implementation periods are already similar in length. And I think that was the gist of those changes. So I think that the schedule that's posted and then has been merged is the schedule that folks should plan on sticking to. If you have any questions, I think the best thing to do is probably to ping Grace. You can just reach out on the SIG Release Slack channel or the email list and ask questions there, and we can have async discussions on anything there. All right. If anybody has any other topics they'd like to add to the open discussion, feel free, but we'll start off with Marco since he's got a nice demo prepared for us. Marco, do you want to take it away for the OBS presentation?
Let me share the screen.
All right.
And let me actually make sure I have everything prepared. I hope you should be able to see my presentation right now.
We can.
So thank you. So I'm going to get started with some updates for OpenBuild service. As some of you might know, we are working on migrating from Google Infra for publishing and hosting packages. Speaking of Debian and RPM packages, to OpenBuild service, which is sponsored by SUSE. And it is work in progress. We are trying to forward the implementation so that we integrate our release pipeline with OBS and with everything that comes with it. This is a bit new because we never handled publishing packages on our own. It was always Google folks who did it for us. So there's some significant changes that we have to introduce to make sure that we actually support this and it works very well. I will try to recap today what we're going to do, starting with what we already did. And then we are going to see maybe some ideas about how it is going to look like. The first thing that I want to answer for today is like, where are we today? Like what we did so far, what is done, what is working, and what is something that we can eventually already integrate. Probably the biggest thing out of those that we did is that package specs are completed and tested. And I would like to take opportunity again to thanks to now for refactoring our specs to be compatible with that build with SUSE platform that, for example, we are using for building S309X packages and with OBS overall. The way it is working right now, we are having only RPM packages, which we are taking to also auto-generate Debian packages. So that part is working very well thanks to the build. And the general building packages is working very well. And when you try to install them to provision Kubernetes cluster using kubeadm and to run conformance test, that part is working very well. The next thing that we have is that structure for OBS projects and repos is done. We will take a look at next few slides how it is going to look like. There are some problematic aspects that we decided that there's not the best solution, but we decided to take some trade-offs to make it work well. So we will see about that. And we also have a command to generate specs and archives for OBS. This is krel OBS specs. Some initial version based on kupkg already exists in krel, but there is refactor that is going on that is going to make this command even better than it is right now. And we are also going to see about that later on. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is the organization of repos. Speaking of what Debian and RPM repos, and the most important thing before proceeding is to understand that OBS projects and repos are mapped one-to-one. So that means that when I say OBS project, that is also a repo, or when I say repo, that is also has its own OBS project. So that if I use one or another word, depending on context, it is basically the same. So in the context of this presentation, there's no big difference. And in context of what our end user is going to see, there's no difference. There's some difference in like access control and stuff like that, that is going to be more relevant later on. And what is also important to mention is that our parent project on OBS is ICV Kubernetes. So I'm going to quickly open it up. It is basically empty, but it has a bunch of sub-projects, which are like ICV Kubernetes Core, then Core Stable and Core Stable 126, and then 126 build. There's also going to be for 127 and all other versions that depending on where we add support for OBS and how we handle that. But what is important to understand is basically this structure. We are also going to have like a core pre-release for pre-releases like Alpha, Beta, and Darcy. And we are eventually going to have nightly for daily builds, but this is not planned kind of out of scope now. What is also important there is that we have 2 different repos or OBS projects per version. The first one is ICV Kubernetes core stable, the micro version, for example, WOT26 that we had a chance to see before. And this is a user-facing repo project. Like this is something that users are going to add to their systems, like depending on the instructions that we provide to them, and they're going to pull additional packages from that repo. However, building is not happening in that repo actually. We have another project that is only dedicated to building, and this has build as a suffix. And this is where we push specs, archives, and everything where build happens. Then we do a release command, and then this is making those artifacts that we build packages to be available in the user-facing project. And there's actually a technical reason for that. It is because OBS, when speaking of normal projects, those projects can only keep 1 package version at a time. For example, we build 126.5, and next month we build 126.6. When we do so, 126.5 is not available anymore. And this is something that we don't want. This is quite a huge issue. So there's a dedicated project type that's called maintenance project, where we can't do building, but it can keep multiple package versions. For example, both 126.5 and 126.6. So that's the way it works. Like we do in a normal project building, and then publish it to a maintenance project that can keep multiple versions at a time. However, as I mentioned earlier, there are 2 problematic packages, and the first one is cri-tools, and the second one is Kubernetes CNI. Why? Because those 2 packages are not versioned in the same way as Kubernetes. So cri-tools, for example, follows to some degree Kubernetes notation of versioning. So there's like cri-tools 126.0 and 127.0, but it doesn't really follow the patch release schedule at all. And Kubernetes CNI doesn't follow the Kubernetes versioning at all. Like you have Kubernetes CNI 1.2.0. And the problem that we are going to have there is when we create a new project for a new minor release, which also means a new repo, we have to publish cri-tools and Kubernetes CNI again in that new project. So we create a project for 127, that will be an empty project. We have to create cri-tools and we have to create Kubernetes CNI again, and we have to push again, trigger again the build, and then do the publishing process for those packages. And there is an example given here on slides as well, similar to that. It is important to know that those 2 packages, same versions of those packages might exist in all the projects, for example, 126. There's also a question of that if we decide to backfill, like to publish again, like how many versions should we publish it? And after discussing it with Sasha, who also is a maintainer for cri-tools, we decided only on the latest version at this time. And we will see if we need to extend that. And the alternative that we consider there is that we publish CNI and cri-tools in dedicated repos. So if you get back here, where it is, not ICV Kubernetes core, but for example, ICV Kubernetes cri-tools or ICV Kubernetes CNI, and then publish to those dedicated projects. And that the projects could be used for all Kubernetes versions. However, the issue is that users would have to add 3 different repos to their system, not only 1. That is not ideal, so we decided to try this approach and see if it is going to give us problems. But if there's any feedback, it is very welcome. I also asked OBS folks today, actually not much before this meeting, about can we eventually fork packages so that we just copy them in some way or make them available even if they're in another project. So we are going to wait for a response and see, but this is the plan that we have for now regarding those 2 packages. And now I will take a moment to see what is to tell us, like what is the mission statement that at least I have in mind, but that would be nice that we all agree about that. And this is that we want to make managing and publishing packages possible for all Kubernetes subprojects the same way as for core packages. And when I say core packages, I mean kubelet, kubeadm, kubectl, cri-tools, Kubernetes CNI. We want to have a universal platform and universal tooling that can work for any kind of project that is in the Kubernetes ecosystem, and that would publish under ICV Kubernetes, even if we are going to see how that exactly going to work, but we want to make this possible. So for example, if let's say Minikube comes someday and say we want to publish in ICV Kubernetes, we already have a tooling to provide. Or if let's say cri-tools decide someday we don't want to publish along with Kubernetes, we want to publish standalone on our own, we have tooling them to provide so they can do this. Ideally, this is going to work like promotion process. That we would have a manifest and that you would add your entry for a package, and that some pre-submit job is going to be triggered and to do the publishing process. But this is a bit of long term. It is going to work a little bit different for now, but we will implement some idea of publishing process even right now, and we are going to see that in upcoming slides. Oops. So the question is where we want to go. Let's talk a little bit about tooling. We have the command that is mentioned. This is krel OBS to manage specs and packages. And there's going to be 3 commands for that. There's going to be krel OBS specs. This one already exists, but it is going to be refactored. There's going to generate specs and archives with assets and with specs and with everything. It is important to understand what this is. I hope we have some time. So OBS is a little bit different than what we have right now. Builds are actually air-gapped, so there's no connection to the internet. We can trigger a build and then start, let's say, downloading from the GC bucket or from, I don't know, by HTTPS from the KTS.io. We actually have to prepare everything beforehand, push that to OBS. They're having some simplified version of Git, like you have a version control system, and basically when you push it, it's automatically going to trigger build, and then you eventually, if you are satisfied with the build result, you request those packages to be published to the user-facing project. And the specs is the first step in that. It is going to generate specs, archives that has all binaries, that's going to be pushed to OBS, and OBS is going to build packages. Then we have krel OBS stage, which is going to wrap krel OBS. So krel OBS specs, that command only works on specs and archives levels. It doesn't interact with OBS. But krel OBS stage is going to take that command and OSC, which is OBS CLI, wrap everything together. So we are going to see what is the workflow going to look like. And we are also going to have krel OBS release, which releases packages from builder project to user patient project, which we talked about earlier. And this is an example of krel OBS specs command. You will provide a template there that has like I can briefly show it. Give me a second. So you should be able to see my VS Code, a lot of files and a lot of stuff. But basically what you have in CMD krel templates latest, you have for each package templates. And cri-tools spec file, for example, for cri-tools, license and readme, and it basically defines RPM spec for that package. What is happening with Debian packages? We mentioned that build and automatic conversion. This is happening in OBS itself. OBS is going to trigger that build to generate the Debian files, and then basically based on that files to build packages. And this is basically how it looks like. We provide a path to this tier. It is eventually going to be versioned, so for each minor Kubernetes release, so that we can easily change spec files. But we will see also about that, how exactly is that going to look like. And you also provide stuff like output, package, what you want to build, version, package source. It can be from HTTPS, for example, if you want to download from the internet, or if you want to take it from the Google GCS bucket, that's now possible as well. And this is basically how it looks like. I can go quickly. Let me move my terminal to another window. So I will try to make the screen a bit bigger. So how it works, like we do krel OBS specs. What we can do, the first thing, we can provide a package, make it kubectl. let's provide version, and this is 126.5. We can provide where are templates. Template, this is template here. krel templates latest. We can also provide what we miss output here, and it is like, let it be temp kubectl. I just need to make sure to create it. Directory, and let me see if we are missing anything else. And let's put the package source. And for that, I'm going to take the bucket that has 126 files. And now when I hit, let me just see. I think I changed it to output. And now what is actually happening, it created a package definition in tab kubectl. Now it decided to use like release channel, like this table channel, to take 126.5. It is copying from GCS. And when it is done, it is going to archive everything in RGS that we are going to push. And we are going to get a message that it is successful. And if I go here, I am actually going to see that. And this is like the templated kubectl spec that has version inserted, release, and everything else that we need. All right. And if I do unpack this star, it is basically having everything here, like all the binaries for all architectures that we're going to build for, along with licenses with. And let me get back to the presentation. Just a quick question, Jeremy. How much time do we have? Do we have any other topics, or I have time for presentation?
We don't have any other topics that I saw last time I checked, so I would just keep going. And if anybody added anything, we can either punt it till next time or get it at the end if we have time. But this is really interesting, so please keep going.
Okay, thank you. And what is important about this specs command that we just saw is that it is a simplified version of what kubeptg was doing before. But now it is only supporting RPM packages, which can be extended if needed. We can also add support for Debian packages. It supports GCS as a source for binaries. It has a simplified code base, but it is also universal. So as we said in the vision statement earlier, we want to make it possible to use this command for any sub-project in our community. So stuff like dependencies and package sources are defined in a YAML manifest. So it is not defined in a code base. That was the case before. There's actually a YAML manifest that has this defined. That actually inspiration for this YAML manifest was how the promotion process for images and files work right now. And this is actually the example of this YAML manifest. I can show it here in VS Code. So here is the way how it looks like. Basically, you provide a package, for example, cri-tools. Then you can provide a version constraint. This is like, to what version of cri-tools is this going to apply this rule? And then you have source URL template, like from what place it is going to download the binary, for example. And I provided it a GCS bucket for cri-tools. Like you can provide you have some template options to provide like package version, architecture, channel, whatever you might need. And like you build such source URL template, krel OBS specs is going to run this template. It is going like to prepare the URL and then download from it. You can also mention if it is star.js or not. Then we have kubeadm, for example. It is a little bit different. For source URL, we have a dedicated function called Kubernetes URL that is building similar URL to this, but for Kubernetes buckets. It also supports stuff like pulling from CI artifacts for nightly builds eventually. So that's the reason why we have dedicated function, but it is also an example of what happens when you have dependencies. You can, for example, provide, this is actually what we had before, you can provide some version constraint that you require kubelet 1.13.0 at least or newer, and you require Kubernetes CNI 1.2.0 and cri-tools 1.26.0. And this is actually going to be inserted in RPM spec when you run it. There is, for example, the kubelet spec. Here is like we iterate through all dependencies and actually put everything here as a query. And maybe I have it handy to show it, like kubelet test, kubelet spec. You can see, for example, Kubernetes CNI in case for kubelet. And yeah, it is defined it like this. So with this, any project could create metadata YAML, prepare everything here and just use our tooling. So this is a step forward going to eventual promotion process that I discussed before. And now that's it regarding krel OBS specs for now. We are going to talk a little bit about OBS stage. That's another subcommand that we mentioned before. And this subcommand should invoke krel OBS specs, the command that we've seen just now, and wrap it around the OSC CLI. Now this wrapping is not like it is going to be shell out to run the OSC in shell. That's not the best experience, but there are no Go libraries that we can use. In the future, we might want to interact with OBS APIs directly, for example, create such a library, but this is not the scope for alpha, maybe for beta, or even once we reach stable, we will see about that exactly. But the idea is that we will have the normal stage done. So like you run krel stage, as we do just now, it is going to finish everything to publish to the stage GCS bucket, and from there, krel OBS stage is going to take the stage. It is going to run OSC checkout. It is like that is going to pull the project to pull all the packages. Then in each package, we are going to run krel OBS specs to generate specs and archives. Then there's a command that's called OSC add remove. That is like alternative of git add dot. It is basically going to make sure that everything is staged. And there is like OSC commit that's actually going to push everything to OBS. And that's basically where the stage is going to be done, like krel stage. It's going to be completed after those steps. It's mostly like going to be even a completely different stage, something like we have for signing. So right now we have a dedicated stage in Google Cloud Build. That's the way most likely that krel OBS stage is going to work. This is the way that I'm looking forward while researching now. We will see if it is going to work. And the idea how this command is going to look like, so this doesn't exist yet, is that we are going to provide like krel OBS stage. We are going to provide project, which is like ICV Kubernetes core stable v126. We are going to provide the list of packages, version for that packages, package source. Maybe this is going to be replaced with not package source, but with build version. So we just provide this part here. This is going to be, I'm going to see about that. And there's going to be like a publish flag that is, we will see about that a little bit later. So let's go more slowly. And krel OBS release, it is going to be a very simple command. It's just going to make sure that builds are successful to run OSC release. It is again going to do OSC checkout to check out everything and then do OSC release of those packages. And that's basically it. Like this is going to trigger the publishing process. So on OBS side, it is fairly quick, takes like maybe less than a minute, and packages are going to be available. It's going to happen like in normal release, like in krel release. We're going to wait for the normal part to be done, the part that we have already, then krel OBS release will be run, and then krel release will be done, and that's basically it. Idea for that command is that it is going to be pretty simple. Like you're going to provide the project, you're going to provide packages, and then again, this publish flag that we are going to see on next slide. So what are the operational modes that I'm planning for this to work? There's going to be similar to krel stage and krel release. So there's going to be integrated mode, like as part of krel stage. So you run krel stage to stage the release or krel release. It's going like at the end to make sure that we also run OBS stage and OBS release. And this is nothing too complicated, but this is not going to work for sub projects because they don't use krel to release their releases. And there's going to be a standalone mode, which is going to run a cloud build job that's going to build and publish your packages. That's what was the publish flag It should actually be submit flag, but I realized that too late. It's going to work in a way that you're, for example, going to run that in krel that has access to run cloud build job. It is going to run the cloud build job to do the publishing, and that's basically it. That's similar to how we build images right now. For example, in SIG Release, for example, for kubectl, it's similar images. We run GCP Google Cloud Build job, and there's where build happens. So this is the idea for this as well, so that you can do something like that, and that's going to build the stuff for you. So what is the outlook? For alpha, speaking of going to graduate to alpha, we want to finish krel OBS specs completely. Let's hope this is going to be upcoming days. There's not a lot of work left, at least not in my opinion. We are going then to implement krel OBS stage and krel OBS release. Then unit integration and end-to-end test. So one thing that I'm going to do, at least initially, is that I will probably drop the test that we have and then get back to test later, because I'm still experimenting and trying to figure out how it is going to look like. Spending a lot of time on test and then eventually scratching everything and starting over. Let's hope it's not going to happen. But there are a lot of changes between what we planned and what is actually happening. So testing is going to happen later, but before we actually integrate krel OBS in krel stage, krel release. And then we also have to update CAP 7031, because there are some changes, and it will be nice to clarify everything that we had in this presentation and that is actually going to happen regarding implementation over the upcoming days and weeks. And then we have graduation to beta. When we actually have everything integrated, we can declare beta. And let's hope this is alpha is going to happen for 128. Let's hope beta is going to follow shortly after. And then what is going to happen between alpha and beta? Communication is the most important part. We are going to figure that out. We will look into replacing shelling out to OSC with some Go library that interacts with OBS. Such library doesn't exist, as I mentioned before, so we'll probably have to make it ourselves. Let's see about that. And then we will, if we do something like that, we could also come up with a tool to manage users, permissions, and projects, because right now release managers need to do that on their own. And this is like prone to errors. We don't like that. We want GitOps. So we are going to look if such tool is viable. And finally, test for published packages, like are those packages going to install, if cluster is going to pass conformance testing, if backwards compatibility is satisfied, stuff like that. And then we need to clearly define graduation patterns table. Like what is the important part here is how we want to phase out Google infra. Like when do we want to stop publishing, when we want to freeze the Google repos, and to say, please, starting from, let's say, 130, you have to pull packages from OBS. And yeah, that's basically it. And that's basically it for presentation as well. And I want to thank you for listening and coming today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I think maybe we have a few minutes to discuss now if there are no new topics. And finally, also you can reach out to me on Slack, and I will be happy to hear any feedback and ask for any questions.
Cool. Thank you for that, Marco. I'm glad that was recorded so other people can see it. It was really, really informative. Once the recording is available on YouTube, after the magic that happens, I'll try to find it and drop a link into the channel so we can signal boost it a little bit more.
I'm also going to share slides after the meeting is done on our Slack SIG Release, so you can find slides there as well.
Perfect. When you do that, I'll find the link to the recording and drop it as a reply to that in the thread. Cool. Does anybody have any questions about the OBS work? I think Marco would be happy to answer some questions for the next few minutes. Otherwise, we can call it a day. Give folks a little bit of time back. All right. As Marco said, if you're interested, please follow up on Slack. I think there's a lot of good stuff that'll come out of this, and it'll be a nice improvement for the way things work today when we get it all done. All right. Thanks again, Marco. And thanks again, everybody, for attending today. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you on the internet.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.